Greetings, everyone. My name is William Porter. Welcome to this edition of Storytelling Time. This program is sponsored by Everett Black Entrepreneur Network. And I'm so happy to have with us again today Lou Everett and Sherry McManus of the Lou Everett Group here in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area. And I'd like to mention that you are actually physically not here in North Carolina today. You're actually in New York State. So we're taking very full advantage of the Zoom technology.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you agree that we're looking forward to the day when we're able to meet more face-to-face once we get out of this pandemic that we're in. But as you mentioned before, we just have to make the best of things, right? And there are some advantages of doing Zoom, as a matter of fact.
Right.
So anyway, good to have you back. And for our viewers and listeners who don't know, you all are business people dealing with personal development. And we've been talking about the strategies put forward by John C. Maxwell, the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And this is a book that he's written, and I would recommend the book for anyone who would like to improve their personal development as well as development in business.
Mm-hmm.
And he has given these 15 strategies. We talked about 11 of them prior to today's program. And today we'll talk about the last 4 strategies that Maxwell puts forward. So let's start with the law of, and I'm very curious about this, by the way, the law of curiosity. I had to get that in there. Law of curiosity. Last time, of course, we ended with the law of trade-offs, but this time we're going to start with curiosity. Why is it so important for us to be curious beings as we move forward in our personal as well as our business endeavors?
Well, let's think back to when you first learned something exciting. And you learned that you were good at something and that you loved something. And there was that new, fresh desire, that inspiration that you had and the love that you had by doing something that you just learned how to do. That's what we call a beginner's mindset. Also, like a child's mindset, right? When they've learned something new, they don't know they can fail. And they continue to improve consistently over time just because they're good at it and they love it. They're passionate about it. That's what we're talking about here. Being curious, keeping that beginner's mindset fresh in your mind of how did it feel when I first experienced learning this and growing. That's what stimulates growth is by doing that. Asking why is this good? Why is this happening? Why should I grow? Just like children do.
I was going to say, I think a great example is that if you have young children or grandchildren, and they're learning how to tie their shoes for the first time, or maybe picking out their own outfits for the first time, that joy and that excitement, right? Or even on Christmas Day when they see this, all beautiful done up tree and see what Santa brought with them. It's just that joy, is that excitement. It's just, so, picture that is what you can really kind of emulate with this particular law.
Or when a child first learns the word why.
Yep.
Why? What's green? Why is it green?
Yeah.
Well, it's green because that's the color of trees. Well, why is it the color of trees? Like the whys is what helps people learn and helps us grow. We need to get back to that when we're in that stage of growth and leaning to lean upon that curiosity.
It's every parent's nightmare to answering that. But why?
But don't you think we lose that joy after a while? Especially, we talked before in an earlier program about the environment, especially if the environment is not conducive for growth. And even if it is conducive for growth, I think it's something within human beings that we want something new. And so after we've experienced a certain thing, a certain amount of time, then sometimes the joy wears off, don't you think? Mm-hmm. And how can we keep the joy there, even though we may be used to whatever it is that we're doing?
And that's the big question. And that's what these laws are for. If the law of curiosity was not a law that was needed to be reminded of, it wouldn't be in this list, right? It's because of that fact, because of we're impacted by all of these other laws that we've seen, environment not being consistent, the law of pain, all of these things that surround us that can easily rob us of that joy, where we get to the point in our lives on a personal level in our lives where we don't find value in continuing to grow. We begin to say, well, what's the reason? What's the purpose? Why should I do that if this and this isn't going to happen? Why should I do this if I'm just going to be told that I'm not going to be any good anyway? Well, it's the reality of it is we're not talking about other people here. We're talking about you. It's a matter of identifying what it is that you want to do. Where is your joy? What is your passion? And as you mentioned, going into that law of environment, looking at around us and seeing taking that inventory of what's going on around us and saying, what is it that I need to change in order for me to grow? Right.
And not be stagnant, right? Because, we have these quote unquote gurus that are out there, and they're the experts on whatever that they're good at, which is great. And there are people in the world that are like, I know everything, and I got a PhD, and I have this, and I have all the accolades that they can. And that's okay. But then they're not growing. They're just they're limiting themselves. Mm-hmm. Or if you take the awareness of that curiosity and learning and thinking of it as a journey versus a destination, that's where the magic really happens. That's where fulfillment comes in. That's where that joy comes in.
That's why curiosity will come in. It's by automatic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kind of falls right in line with that next law.
Yeah, and that's where passion comes in as well. I mean, if you're passionate about something, even if you're doing it every day. I've been an author now since about 2015. So it's been about 7 years. Yeah. And I haven't gotten tired of it yet. And I took quite a bit of it. But the reason for that is because I have a passion about it. And so you can find ways of getting around discomfort. And but at the same time, accept the fact that you're not maybe in your comfort zone, that may be an opportunity for you to grow more.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
very good point.
It's really interesting. Well, let's move on to the next law of Maxwell, which is the 13th law of modeling. And I think, Lou and Sherry, you may have touched on this before, or it's very similar. Let me just put it this way. It's very similar, I think, to the law of trade-offs. Wouldn't you think? Maybe I'm a little off base there, but...
it certainly can come hand in hand, that's for sure, because sometimes you have to trade off some people for other people.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking about the basketball player, Charles Barkley, who said earlier, a few years ago, that I'm not a role model, that your parents and maybe your minister and your teachers should be more of your role models, except beyond, say, an athlete. And I think that's a decision we have to make, who we look up to.
Yes.
And who we look away from. And that can be very, very important, who we look up to or who we go to for advice and who we stay away from.
That's right.
Sometimes we can make mistakes in those areas. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's, I'll never forget, years ago, when I was a teenager, there was, and this kid and me now are real good friends as adults, but And there was a friend of mine. I thought he was cool. His name was Mike, and Mike was just a really cool guy. I loved hanging around Mike. But my mom always told me that to be careful because Mike was a bad influence. So Mike is not a bad influence. He's a great guy. Love Mike. Drives around in a Z28 and listens to heavy metal music. I'm like, this guy is awesome. I loved him. And we had a lot of good conversations. But then one day I was hanging out with Mike, and we're both young teenagers, underage, from drinking. We couldn't drink yet. Reaches in and pulls out of the cabinet in his bedroom. He was hiding a bottle of liquor and just starts chugging it down. And I was like, yeah, this might be what my mom was talking about. Maybe a bad influence, perhaps. And now Mike and I are really good friends today, and we laugh about those types of things now. But the point being, Jim Rohn says this, and he states that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with. You see, it doesn't mean that we, and this is the sensitivity that we get sensitized as humans, that we decide because there are so many other people that might be bad, that we then in turn don't associate or connect with anybody in fear that we are going to be negatively impacted. So we leave everybody out, which is not a good thing either. The law of modeling shows that we cannot grow unless we have other people to use and to help us improve. We cannot improve if we only have us alone to look at for improvement, because we can't get any better if we don't have a model that's better than us. Okay. Now, obviously, and we've mentioned this before, I am a Christian. You're a Christian. We're faith believers. And we certainly, on our Christian life, have a model. Christ is our model. But even outside of Christ being a perfect human, that's a challenging perspective. But look at people in general. We don't have to be perfect to be a good model. There are people that want to help us, that want us to become better. But we can only be as good as we currently are. We have to become better. We've got to be around people that are better than us in order for us to improve.
Okay, well, great. Well, let's go ahead and take a break now, and we'll come right back in just a moment with Lou Everett and Sherry McManus of the Lou Everett Group. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're here with Lou Everett and Sherry McManus of the Lou Everett Group. We now are at the 14th law, so we're coming down to the home stretch, Lou and Sherry. The 14th law is the law of expansion. So tell us about this law, the law of expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're talking about growth. So let's look back at the laws that we've talked about, right? The law of the rubber band, the law of curiosity, the law of expansion is, okay, well, now that we're understanding these laws up to this point, how can then we increase our capacity of what we can do, which is expansion? And I go back to looking at the law of the rubber band again, because when you when you walk into, let's say, a Staples or an Office Max, do you go and buy one rubber band alone? No, generally they come in bags, right?
Not enough.
Yeah, we end up, and that's funny. We buy them in big old bags, and we have a hard time finding the rubber band sometimes, right? But we get them in a big bag in all different sizes, generally speaking. And so expansion means, okay, sometimes as we grow and as we're learning these laws and as we're expanding our knowledge and our experiences based upon what we've learned here, we then in turn have to go back into the bag of rubber bands to pull out another one that's big enough now to hold us together as we grow. We've got to constantly swap out this rubber band as we expand so that we can put all of this in perspective and grow and increase the capacity in which we can continue to give to others, receive ourselves, and continue to grow in the direction that we intend to be.
Okay. Okay, now we come to our last law, the 15th law of Maxwell, and that is the law of contribution. And actually, in my opinion, the other 14 laws are predicated on this particular law, in my opinion. So tell us about the law of contribution.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, so the law of contribution is good, is remarkable. It kind of really, I like it because it's at the end, because if you put this in the beginning or even in the middle of it,
people skip over it.
Yeah, you skip over it.
Right? We skip over it.
We do.
At the end, you're like, oh, I got to read it now. I'm only one chapter left.
And this law in particular, again, we're talking about growth here. Growing yourself, it really enables you to grow others.
Yeah.
That's the great thing. We need to equip others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something in this book that I personally learned and has helped, is that just because we learn all this knowledge, right? You can have all the accolades, in the book and all the letters after your name. But if you keep that to yourself, how is that helping anybody else?
That's right.
And it's like our analogy of this is like getting a present, wrapping up with the best wrapping paper, best bow in the world, beautiful package, and then not giving it.
Doesn't serve a purpose.
It doesn't serve a purpose.
Yeah, you've got. We
got to learn a little bit. That's what our mentors have said. This, learn a little bit, do a little bit. Learn a little bit, do a little bit.
And we will add to that, then give a little bit.
Right.
You see, and that's what it's all about. The law of contribution is, and you're right, Dr. Porter, this is the culmination of learning these laws. And it's a culmination of being who we are as humans, is coming to the realization of, well, why am I growing myself? Well, of course, we have our own personal intuitions as to why. But ultimately, our purpose and one of our main purposes to grow ourselves so that we can grow to give others. We can grow other people by giving to them. Here's a great example. Even if you're looking at it from a very simple level of your family. It was last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago now. I think it was last year. We did a poll, beginning of last year. Did a poll online to ask, what is it that would keep you from growing yourself personally or investing in personal growth? And we gave options, one of which was money. There was a few other options in there. And it always came, and then people would say money a lot. But then we continued that poll and said, well, what if money was not an object? What if it was free? Then people say, well, I'd much rather spend time with my family or much rather do this. And so they're saying they want to give to somebody else of that time, but not themselves. In other words, they didn't find value in who they were in order to add value to themselves. The issue there and here's the question, and then of course we take that, and there was 65% of those polls stated this, right? So that shows you where most people are. Now, here's a question I'll leave you with on this law of contribution. Just thinking about you and your family. I'll make a statement. You can only give to those that you love at the limit of your own growth. You cannot give any more than that, no matter how much you try. So if you say to yourself, I want to give my family so much more than I've ever had and that I have. Well, if that's the case, and you've got to give it to yourself first. You have to grow yourself first before you can give that to other people. That's the law of contribution.
Not only that, but the law of contribution, I believe, contributes to the amount of joy that you have.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, that's where you get your joy from, helping other people, not just helping yourself. Obviously, there's a certain amount of joy and happiness that you get from that, but the ultimate joy comes from helping someone else and see that someone else is being benefited, especially from something that you've done. And if you can help, and I think Sherry, or it may have been you, Lou, you mentioned earlier about experience. If you can help someone out of your experience, not to go through the same thing, then the amount of joy that you get from that is just awesome.
Absolutely.
And this is what I'm reading now, the last chapter, at least someone who Maxwell inserted a quotation from Robert Louis Stevenson. And this is what he says. I consider the success of my day based on the seeds I sow, not the harvest I reap. So he bases his success on how he helps others, the seeds that he sows in order for at some point someone else might be benefited. And so that says a whole lot, I think.
Sure does.
Right. It's creating that legacy is what we talk about a lot for that, you know? So that's an amazing quote.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we've pretty much run out of time. I want you, though, to take maybe 2 or 3 of these laws and tell our audience how it might apply to anyone who might want to become an author. That's what we try to do in our programs, is to reserve a little bit of time to offering suggestions on how anyone can become an author or a professional writer if they choose to do so. And I think some of these laws that we talked about can help in doing that. So what do you think? What kind of laws do you think that we've already talked about in this session or in any other session for that matter that could help someone interested in becoming an author and help them do that?
That's a good question. And just in anything in general, right? The 15 laws help provide an in-depth perspective of your own person, of you as a person. As a writer, the whole goal and purpose of writing is to pour out something that's in you out onto paper or a digital form, whichever way you're writing it. Well, in order to pour out what's in here, you've got to know what's in there first, right? That law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. You've got to know what's in there. And do not be afraid to be curious about what that means. The law of curiosity, to be able to share that out with others and tell your story and impact those that are around you. The law of contribution. Understanding that those that are going to read your material and read your what you have written will then begin to see value, perhaps in themselves. The law of the mirror. So I would just encourage you all that if writing is your passion, be intentional about that. Growth doesn't just happen. You've got to work towards that direction. That's a law of intentionality. Develop a plan, a strategy to make that happen, connecting with the right people, the law of design. Look around, look who's around you. Take an inventory of those who are influencing your ideas, your ideologies, or impacting and influence you, whether in a negative or positive way. Learn from them, the law of modeling. You may have to take and make some sacrifices in being a successful writer, the law of trade-offs.
I would add the law of consistency.
The law of consistency.
Write a little bit each day.
Every day.
But the fact of the matter is that we could utilize all of each one of these laws.
That's exactly right.
If we want to become that writer that some of us want to be, and some of us want to improve on being. Well, listen, we're almost out of time. Give our listeners and viewers your contact information again.
Absolutely. Yep. Feel free. Our website is LouEverettGroup.com. We are also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. On our website, there is our phone number and even our calendar. We're happy to let's connect and see where you are and where your passion and vision is. We'd love to help you.
Yep. We'd love to hear it.
And you always have these mastermind series like you had a couple of months ago. So I think people would benefit greatly if they would get in on some of these series, and they would get even more detailed information about some of the things that we've talked about superficially today and during these last 2 weeks. And I appreciate you all so much for being here these last 3 weeks. I mean, it's been just grand. And
absolutely.
Future, hopefully we can do it again at some point, maybe not with Maxwell, but maybe with some other. You know, there are a lot of professional development, personal and business or entrepreneurial development material out there that you all have introduced me to and others. So this does not necessarily have to be the end at all.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. No, we look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Well, listen, I'd like to say to our audience, just keep this in mind. Whether you're going through something that's good or bad, remember that there's always more good things coming your way. So we'll see you the next time.